It's no BS, it's all truth.
But they are who we thought they were, and we let them off the hook.
It's time to get straight to the point. Here's Adam Sager.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the debut edition of the spin-off of the Straight to the Point podcast, which hits on all sports. Well, this is going to be Straight to the Sox. Straight to the Sox, straight to the White Sox. Everybody knows I'm a Chicago guy. I'm a White Sox guy. Well, here we go. New podcast, new season coming up, a season filled with a ton of potential, a ton of expectations, and quite frankly, a ton of fun as we're going to see more guys coming into this team, and we've had some guys leave now who are non-tendered. We got some guys that the Sox are looking to bring in. Who are those and who should they be going after? We'll get into that a little bit here. But this is something I want to start, weekly, as I'm looking for my next spot to be on air. We're not going to stop doing podcasts. I'm not going to stop doing Straight to the Point because college football is crazy right now. The NFL is crazy right now. We got the NBA starting back up. So I'm going to be trying to do this, for, straight to the Sox, straight to the Bulls, straight to the Bears. I want to get this whole thing rolling into one massive thing, but with different podcasts. So it'll just be me. Hopefully I can bring in some guests here soon. But we're going to be having a lot of fun doing these. And again, if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at Adam G. Sager. On Instagram, at Adam G. Sager. You can email the podcasts, all of them, at one spot. It's straight, the number 2, thepointpod@gmail.com. That's where you can find us. You can hit us up, ask us any questions. You can also DM me on Twitter. Again, that's at Adam G. Sager. So, straight to the Sox. Let's start with the big news from last night. And it has nothing to do with on the field. It's what you hear while they're on the field. We all know they have a great, and I mean a great, duo on the TV side of things with Jason Benetti and Steve Stone. I love listening to those two. Jason Benetti he's so good at his job. I mean, I was listening the other day, called College Basketball with Bill Walton. He does college football on ESPN. You hear him, you see him do everything. He was calling KBO games on ESPN. He occasionally will call an ESPN baseball a national game. One of the best in the business. The radio job was open. Andy Mazur did a great job last year, filling in his 1 year after the horrible death of Ed Farmer. Such a nobody was expecting it, and it happened. It was terrible. Andy Mazur came in and did a great job for the 2020 season, and what ended up being a shortened season, but ended up being a very fun season because the White Sox made it back to the playoffs. Who does the team go get? Who does the team tab to be the next play-by-play guy for White Sox radio? And remember, they're going back to ESPN 1000 this year in Chicago. They go get the Cubs play-by-play guy, Len Kasper, who is a top 5 guy in his own. So now the White Sox play-by-play guys, TV Jason Benetti, I just talked about how great he is. And he's a White Sox guy. He grew up loving the White Sox. So hopefully, I'm hoping he's there for a very, very long time in that seat. But then you go get Len Kasper. You go get Len Kasper to be your radio guy. And you steal him from the other side of town. I mean, what a great move by the White Sox. What a great move by Mike Thomas and ESPN 1000 to be able to bring those two together. It's a very good day for White Sox fans that just love listening to their play-by-play guys talk about their teams on the field. Again, Len Kasper is one of the best to do it. I mean, my stepmom is one of the biggest Cubs fans you'll know. I know she loves Len Kasper. She's going to be devastated to hear this news. But she can still hear him right here in town. Right here in town. Just flip on up to ESPN 1000. listen to the White Sox game. So it's a great move by the team. They're going to announce it here in just a little bit. It's fantastic. I'm very pumped for this. I'm very pumped that they're back on ESPN 1000. Remember, their last season on ESPN 1000 was the 2005 World Series. And then they left. Now they go back with a team that is supposed to compete for a World Series. So good for the White Sox, good for ESPN 1000, good for Len Kasper. A lot of talk that he wasn't too fond of the Marquee Network, which, I mean, from everything I hear, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, I talk to buddies who live here, I talk to people who watch it, this and that, and I'm talking Cub fans, buddies, guys that love the Cubs, watch it. They don't like the Marquee Network. It started off where you couldn't even find it, and then they had to make that last-second deal to get it on. It's just... The Marquee Network has been, I don't want to call it a disaster, but it's been pretty damn close. It has been pretty damn close to a disaster so far. And this is the latest blow, because this is a blow. Len Kasper, again, is one of the best in the business. And now he's going to do White Sox radio games. It's going to be awesome. It is going to be awesome. How do you even choose which one you want to... Do you want to turn down the game, turn down Benetti, and listen to Len Kasper? Do you want to just avoid the radio and listen to Jason Benetti and Steve Stone? DJ will be in the booth with Len Kasper for now, at least. DJ's gotten a lot better. So I think, again, it's a great move for the White Sox. I love it. All right, now let's switch to on the field. Had a couple big decisions made. Nomar Mazara, Carlos Rodon, gone, non-tendered. They are out the door. That doesn't mean they can't be brought back on smaller deals if the White Sox, and Mazara or Rodon are interested in that. But right now they are considered free agents. I was wondering, I thought Nomar Mazara would get non-tendered. They brought back Larry Garcia. They brought back Jace Fry. They brought back, obviously, Lucas Giolito, Evan Marshall, and maybe Reynaldo Lopez was tendered a contract. I was wondering what they were going to do with Carlos Rodon. And obviously I got my answer. It was just something that I saw a tweet the other day that was perfect describing Carlos Rodon. When he didn't have his best stuff, his command was really good. When he had his best stuff, his command was never there. And then when he had both, and seemed like he was turning a corner, the health was never there. It just never worked out for Carlos Rodon. I thought, and listen, you can go back and look at the 2014 draft and say, oh, they should have taken Trey Turner, who went 15th, or Michael Conforto, who went, I think, 10th or 11th. Well, that's just hindsight. Carlos Rodon was the right pick at number 3. I remember sitting there. I was actually at that time running the board for Cubs minor league baseball. I can't even remember maybe it was Kane County. I don't know. I don't even remember. But I remember sitting there. I'm running a game that night while the draft is on. So I got my computer. I'm paying attention to that. I'm obviously paying attention to the game. And, Brady Aiken went 1. Well, we all know that was a bust. Tyler Kolek went 2. I don't even know if he's in baseball anymore from the Miami Marlins. And then number 3 was sitting there. It was Carlos Rodon, the big lefty out of North Carolina State. Had great stuff, had a great season, and the White Sox made the pick. It was the right pick. It didn't work out. And then who went number 4? To the Chicago Cubs, Kyle Schwarber. What happened on the same day? Carlos Rodon and Kyle Schwarber, both non-tendered. The Cubs also non-tendered Kyle Schwarber. So it's definitely... it was a rough day for that 2014. That 2014 draft was not very good. I mentioned a couple guys there, and Trey Turner and Michael Conforto, that obviously are pretty good players. I mean, Trey Turner is a great shortstop. Michael Conforto is a great outfielder for the New York Mets. It's definitely... it was an interesting decision for Carlos Rodon, but I understand why they made it. They have a ton of young pitching. You have Michael Kopech coming back. You have Dane Dunning coming off a solid start to his Major League Baseball career. You have Dylan Cease. And then obviously you have Lucas Giolito and Dallas Keuchel at the top. They're looking for... I think they will bring in the number 2 or number 3 via trade or free agency. Someone from outside the organization will come in, and then you're going to have young guys. Dylan Cease. And let's remember, since I've done this last podcast, they have hired Ethan Katz, who was Lucas Giolito's high school coach back in the day. Him and now I'm going to blank on the other 2 guys that are in the majors. They were all on the same staff together. But he is now the White Sox pitching coach. And he is the one credited with changing Lucas Giolito's arm path to the more short arm, that he went from the worst pitcher in Major League Baseball that first year with the White Sox to a very good ace-type pitcher the next year. And it's all because he changed his arm slot. So, of course, you're thinking, well, let's get him in here working with Michael Kopech. Let's get him in here working with Dylan Cease especially. Dane Dunning, how can he help him? How can he help these young guys? Garrett Crochet. What can he do with these guys to make them even better? So while I still see the White Sox bringing in somebody, of course I'd love a Trevor Bauer. But do they say, we believe in Dylan Cease to take that next step and become the number 3? I don't think they think that. I think they know they need more of a front end of the rotation type guy, a 2 or a 3, to go with Giolito and Keuchel. More so than a back end guy who, if they do get a back end guy, it'll be just a guy coming in that is the 5, and he may end up moving at some point. It'll be probably a 1-year deal. You're not bringing anybody on a 2. But I think the front-end guy will be brought in with some team control through a trade. A lot of people have talked about Blake Snell, and I'm going to talk about that here in a second. But there's been a bunch of other names thrown out there of guys who may be available. So Ethan Katz is a big piece here. Obviously, we talked about the Tony La Russa hiring. Everybody still hates it, rightfully so, but he did build a solid staff around him. They kept Frank Menachino, who did some very good things with this young team. I like the fact that he stays, but Ethan Katz is the guy that everybody's looking at as a guy that can really help these young pitchers and continue to build Lucas Giolito, because here's one thing that we do know heading into the offseason. They need to figure out how to get Giolito and Grandal on the same page, or Giolito and whoever the backup catcher ends up being. Because remember, Lucas Giolito's primary catcher, his personal catcher, was James McCann. There's a lot of talk right now, there's a lot of reports saying that the Mets and James McCann have been talking contract and talking 4 years. Well, the White Sox aren't going to do that. They just signed Yasmani Grandal to a 4-year deal. I mean, unless the money completely made sense, which I guarantee you for the White Sox it doesn't, because you're going to be looking, I'm guessing, anywhere from $8 to $9 million, maybe even 10 for James McCann. He has to go take that. Of course, would you love to keep him? Yes. He's awesome. But it's not going to happen. So Ethan Katz needs to work with Giolito and Grandal and whoever ends up being that second catcher to figure out how to bridge that gap to get to where Giolito is pitching like he did with James McCann. If it's just a flow, if it's the way that McCann called games, if it's just the trust level. I think that's the key for Lucas Giolito. But also, Katz can come in and tweak little things he's seeing. Maybe the arm motion's off a little bit here, or he can do this with his curveball here. Lucas Giolito's great, but you can never stop getting better. And that's what I expect Cass to do with Giolito. I think he can help Keuchel. Just, maybe there's something he can do just to get a little bit more out of the changeup, which is one of the best in baseball. Do a little bit more to get a little bit, even more ground balls. It's nice to have that fresh thought process come in from the pitching coach. And I think that's going to help guys like Dylan Cease, even Michael Kopech, who we all know opted out last year. Well, he's going to be looked at to be a part of this rotation. He is a major piece in the Yoan Moncada, in the Chris Sale deal for Yoan Moncada and Michael Kopech. He's going to be expected to be a part of this roster this year at some point. I don't know if that will start out that way. He may start out in the minors to just kind of get back into games and have 3 or 4 or 5 starts down there in AAA Charlotte just to get his mind right throwing in actual competitive games. But he will be thought to be up and part of this roster moving forward. Dylan Cease, I think, will be a lot of trade talk around him. I don't think he will be traded. If you go back and listen to Ethan Katz on 670 The Score with, I believe it was Danny Parkins, he talked about Dylan Cease. He talked about just getting him right and little tweaks here and there. Listen, Dylan Cease has a ton of stuff. Obviously, the fastball is one of the hardest in baseball on a consistent basis. He's got a great slider. He's got, I think he can really hone that in, figure out what it was that he did so well at the minor league level. Because he didn't he didn't have control problems in the minor leagues. The control is up here, and it's mainly because if you watch him, it looks like he doesn't fully trust his stuff. He's always yanking the fastball outside. He's always letting it a little, against lefties, he just leaves it a little too far. Doesn't put enough on it to where it fades away. It's just, he doesn't seem to trust his stuff. Because you can see in the results where he's getting a lot of soft contact. And then there'll be times where he'll walk a bunch of guys and he'll give up a hit, or, he will serve up that fastball that, is 96 instead of the 99, and it gets drilled to left field for a home run, or it gets drilled to right field for a home run. He has the stuff to be a very, very good starter in this game. And I think bringing in some fresh eyes, bringing in a younger guy that, maybe relates with him a little bit better than Coop did, I think that can be very beneficial for Dylan Cease. Same thing for Dane Dunning. Dane Dunning, now he's the exact opposite. He's a guy that doesn't have this big fastball. He's got a solid fastball, but he knows how to just work around and he knows how to work through hitters. I think they expect him to be, if I had to guess right now, you're going to have Giolito start game 1. Keuchel or a free agent / trade option start game 2, same thing game 3. And then you're going to have Dylan Cease game 4, and right now I would guess Dane Dunning game 5, with Michael Kopech starting in the minors, working his way back. And then we'll see. Is there a point where, Dane Dunning just isn't quite getting it done, or Dylan Cease just isn't quite getting it done? Let's put Michael Kopech in there. The great thing is the White Sox have all these options. Garrett Crochet, I would start him in the minors pitching. If you want to start him in AAA, do it. If he's just mowing guys down like we saw, and he's showing you he can do it over 6 or 7 innings and keep the fastball at 97 instead of 101, or he can keep it at 98 and go 6 innings and use that slider to keep guys off base, and maybe he develops a little bit of a changeup just to keep guys off base. He's another option. And they said they did tender Reynaldo Lopez a contract. He's another guy that Ethan Katz talked about, maybe kind of changing his arm action, changing his arm angle, just working with him to maybe just get a better release on the ball. Because Reynaldo Lopez is the same thing as Dylan Cease. Throws hard, has good stuff, never consistent. No control. If you can get control for these guys, big things could happen for these young pitchers who are still very young. And maybe that's just to say, hey, Reynaldo, we're going to use you towards the back end of the bullpen. Use your fastball slider. That's it. You don't have to worry about anything else. Fastball, in short bursts, maybe he can be touching 100. Oh, we've seen him touch 100. Maybe he can do it with, consistency. We're not worrying about, I got to do this with 5 more innings. I got 2 more outs, or I got 4 more outs if he's a 2-inning guy. And he can become a weapon out of the bullpen. That's not a bad thing. That happens to guys all the time, and they become stars out of the pen. It's just there's so many options for these young White Sox pitchers because the bullpen isn't set. You've got guys that could still be traded. Cody Hoyer, everybody loves. I talked to a few people who said that teams really wanted Cody Hoyer in major deals. He could still be traded this offseason. So there could still be openings there. Evan Marshall's a guy. Aaron Bummer coming back. They have a lot of pretty good depth in that bullpen. Of course, you don't want to trade Cody Hoyer if you don't have to, unless you're getting a major piece back. But there's a lot of pitchers still coming to the majors. We saw Crochet a little bit last year, but I think we could see him even more this year. Does he just pitch in the minors almost all year, and then towards the end of the year he comes up as a reliever one more time for another postseason run? That could make sense. And then 2022, it's his year. Let's go. You're a starter. You did it all year. You threw 140 innings. Let's get you out here. Let's get you to 175, 180, and let's roll out of the rotation. There's a lot of talent with this White Sox organization that is still coming. On the offensive side of the ball, how do they do it? Let's go back to the pitching first before I get to the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, Trevor Bauer is the guy on the market. He's the guy that everybody talks about. He's talking to everybody. He loves being on social media. Last night at 1:30 in the morning, he said, "What's up, Halo fans?" Talking about the Angels. He likes to be out involved with the fans, and he tweets back at people. He does this, he does that, and he's just a different cat, and he loves to gauge interest of different teams, other fan bases, and then he'll make his decision. How much is he going to get? I have no idea, because this is a guy that's talked about short-term deals. He's not going to do the one-year deal. It's just not going to happen. I know everybody keeps bringing that up. Could he do a 3-year deal for massive money and say, I'll do 3 years, $105 million? I'll do 3 years, $99 million, $33 per year? Does he want the biggest money deal ever for a pitcher, which I believe is somewhere on the $36 million mark? Does he say, I want 108 over 3 years, or did he just say, I want the big contract, I want the 6 years, 190-something million bucks? And of course, most everybody would say, well, give me the guarantee of the 190 million bucks. He may look at it and say, you know what, I'm not slowing down. Give me the 3 years, and then I'll go back on the market, and the market will probably be going up coming off a pandemic. And I can get $40 million a year. That's the way a guy like Trevor Bauer's mind tends to work. So would a 3-year deal shock me at all for Trevor Bauer? Or 2 years with a player option? No, that wouldn't shock me at all. A 1-year deal would still shock me. I don't see him doing that unless he is just seeing a market that is not there due to the pandemic. He says, okay, I'll take 1 year, $30 million, and then get back on the market after we see, hopefully, fans get back in the stands and the revenues start to come back to Major League Baseball. The big name on the trade market, Blake Snell. The word is the Rays could look to move him. of course, White Sox fans went crazy, and rightfully so. Blake Snell is a damn fine pitcher. He is very, very good. But everybody's out here being like, well, yeah, give him Kopech, give him Andrew Vaughn, give him Jonathan Stever, give him Andrew Dahlquist. Give him those 4. Well, first of all, you're not giving up 4 of your top 11 prospects for Blake Snell, a guy who, admittedly, it was because of his team. It was because of his organization and the way they do things. But he's only thrown like 175 innings or 180 innings once. I need a horse. That's where these great pitchers are. They're horses. Justin Verlander, Garrett Cole, Max Scherzer. Give me guys that are horses that can go 210 plus a playoff. Now listen, if the price is right on Blake Snell, of course you jump at it. You know, and I think you'll have to give up one of Michael Kopech and Andrew Vaughn, and maybe a secondary piece like Jonathan Stever. But I'm not doing all 3. That is definitely not happening. I get people want great players for the White Sox, and I understand that. But you got to listen to what Rickon has said over the past few years. We're not going to mortgage the future. And Andrew Vaughn has a place on this team in the future. Jose Abreu is not a young guy. 34 this year? Got 2 years of his contract remaining. They have the designated hitter position open right now. Andrew Vaughn is not far off from being major league ready. Now, he's never played above A ball. But remember, he was also in Schaumburg this year, hitting off AAA pitchers, doing different things, taking grounders at different positions, playing a little bit of outfield. It'll be interesting to see what their plan is for him this year. He will definitely start in the minors. That is the White Sox way. You're not going to screw around with his money, and you hope that he shows you something early. I'm guessing they'll just start him in AAA. Maybe they start him in AA. But start him at one of those 2, and if he rakes and you deem him ready, how have you set up the roster to add in somebody like Andrew Vaughn? That's what we all are waiting to see. But in terms of the pitchers, you're going to have other guys. Masahiro Tanaka is available. I'll pass. Jose Quintana. Now, remember earlier in this podcast I talked about bringing in a vet for the back end to pair with somebody, but that's only if you feel Dane Dunning and Dylan Cease aren't rotation types. If you feel like they are not the guys to be 4 and 5 to start this year after you bring in a top 3 guy, then in my opinion you should be looking to trade them and get something for them. If it's a right fielder, if it's a left fielder to pair with Eloy, who then also DHs, whatever it is, if it's just more minor league depth, you should be looking to trade those guys because those 2 are major league ready. It just goes back to, what does Ethan Katz think? How can he tweak these guys to make them even better than they are now? That's the big question mark. So, I mean, look at guys like Jose Quintana. Obviously a fan favorite. Everybody wants to bring him back, and I understand why. But I'm looking at more guys that have shown to be swing guys, that can go into the bullpen and be a long guy, but come out and make a start, and no problem here and there. And you know what? Maybe you say, Jose Quintana, do you feel comfortable in this role? Could we say, well, we're going to start you in the bullpen, but if Dylan Cease is going to miss 2 starts, can you pop in? And maybe he says, sure, I'll do that to come back to the organization that, busted me into the big leagues. Let's do it. I don't think so, because I think he'll still be looking for decent starter money at 9, 10, 11 million a year. I don't know if he'll get it, but we're going to have to see. I mean, you just saw Mike Minor sign with the Royals. We saw Charlie Morton sign with the Braves, and they got pretty good money. So we're waiting to see where this trend goes with these guys and how the money is looking to be spent. It's definitely interesting. I don't know. It's obviously outside of how they take care of the outfield. The rotation is the biggest key. They do have one more pitching situation that they do need to figure out, and that's who the closer is going to be. Alex Colomé is a free agent. Do they bring him back on a cheaper deal? Do they say, let's look a little higher at Liam Hendricks? We saw him in the postseason this year with the Oakland Athletics. He's a very good pitcher. Or do they think a guy like Cody Hoyer or Aaron Bummer can be the closer and we'll just patch this thing together? That's the other interesting pitching move. So the three pitching thoughts in my mind, outside of what does Ethan Katz do for Dylan Cease, Reynaldo Lopez, Dane Dunning, Lucas Giolito, the bullpen, how does he help those guys and the youngsters, Garrett Crochet and Matthew Thompson, Andrew Dahlquist? How do those guys get better under his tutelage and in the younger guys in this organization, the younger pitching coaches? But the big question marks are, okay, who's going to be in the top three? Who are you adding to this rotation in the top three? Because it's needed. What do they do with Michael Kopech to start? Or kind of the trio of Cease, Kopech, and Dunning? I think Reynaldo Lopez starts in the bullpen. I don't think that he should even be considered until he really shows you something. So those three youngsters, Garrett Crochet, what do you see with him? Do you say, locked down, we're putting him in the minors, he is going to start, he's going to throw 5 to 6 to 7 innings. Hopefully every single start we can expand that arm out, we can extend it, and hopefully maybe he helps us later in the season as a reliever or a starter. But by 2021, we're hoping he is part of the major league rotation. Do you bring in a fifth starter like a Jose Quintana that is in the rotation? That's a question. And then the back end. Who's back there with Aaron Bummer and Cody Hoyer and others to close games out? Who is your closer? Those are the big three pitching questions for me when it comes to on the field. Who's in the top three with Giolito and Keuchel? Do you sign a back end guy? And who's the closer? Those are the three. I'm excited to see because there's so many options. I just mentioned the young guys. That's a great problem to have. It's a great problem to have. Even throw Lopez in that group. Even throw Garrett Crochet in that group. That's 5 guys you're looking for, hopefully 2 spots. And, you can push Garrett Crochet to the minors and say, take your time a little bit. You can throw Reynaldo Lopez in the bullpen and see, let's just use your tenacity. Let's use your velocity. Let's use that out of the bullpen and make you a weapon there. Kopech, you have not pitched in a year, 2 years, obviously, because of the injury and then the opt-out. Let's just get you in some competitive games in AAA. Cease and Dunning, you guys have the 4 or 5 spots to start the year. Let's see what you got. This is your opportunity. You tear it up, you stay in the rotation. But there's other pieces that we can bring up, like Michael Kopech and others, if you struggle at any point, and then we'll figure out what to do. Maybe you just go back to the minors and work on things. So many options on the pitching side. It's a great, great thing for the Chicago White Sox. All right, offensively. This is going a little bit longer than I wanted to, but the Len Kasper news and then just this on-the-field stuff. Offensively, I just talked about Andrew Vaughn a little bit. He's not going to be on the team opening day. We know that. How fast is he ready? That's what the question the White Sox have to ask themselves. Do they want to cover up the DH spot with a legitimate, Nelson Cruz type guy? I don't think so. I think, to me, what I would do, and I said this on Twitter the other day, and it's something I've just finally come to, and what makes it tough is I don't know, can you get these guys for 1-year deals? What's the market like for these guys? But I'm looking to bring in 2 outfielders, even 2 left-handed hitting outfielders, someone that can pair with Eloy Jimenez. And you know what? If Eloy has taken a lot of the DH at-bats this year, that's fine. Keep him healthy. Keep him from chasing balls into the net. Keep him from running into the wall. Keep him healthy for his offense. Because when he fully figures it out, he is going to be an MVP candidate in this league. He could end up being the White Sox best hitter. And with a team full of great hitters, that really says something. So, I mean, to me, obviously, George Springer is the guy everybody wants, just like Trevor Bauer. Those are the two top guys for White Sox needs. JT Realmuto is also there, is one of the best players on the free agent market, but White Sox just signed Grandal. Just take Realmuto out of your thoughts. It's Bauer, it's Springer. Offensively, we look at Springer. White Sox have the opening in right field. Makes a ton of sense. Do they want to pay George Springer anywhere from $25 to $30 million? That's the unknown. I mean, do they say, let's spread it out a little bit? Let's get Jock Peterson to platoon with Adam Engel in right field. Let's get him at, the projections, according to Fangraphs and some others, is $9 to $10 million a year. Okay. Well, if it's 30 for Springer, and then you got 9 for Jock, well, now you can take that money that you have for the offense side of the ball and say, well, let's go get somebody else. Let's say, my thought was, and this is all dependent on Andrew Vaughn, and then are you okay with Andrew Vaughn in the minors for a year? I don't see why you wouldn't be. Michael Brantley in left field. He played a solid left field in Houston. He's a great hitter. He's a professional hitter. He's the type of hitter that takes this offense from great to elite. So let's say you get him for $15 million. Okay, well, now you've spent $24 million to $25 million instead of the $30 on one player. Now you got that $5 million left over to go get your backup catcher. Do you go get a Tyler Flowers or a Mike Zunino or someone along those lines, or do you look at Zach Collins and or Yermin Mercedes or Sebi Zavala and say one of those guys can be my backup? I don't think so. I don't think those guys are full-time backups, especially defensively. I would go get a Tyler Flowers / Mike Zunino. I want a great, maybe even somebody that can be Giolito's personal catcher. And give Grandal days at first base or DH or whatever. But Michael Brantley, what you do, you bring him in. I would say if it's 7 games in a week, I'm playing Michael Brantley in left field 5, Eloy 2, and then swapping them DH, maybe giving them a day off here and letting Grandal DH or play first base and Abreu DH and things like that. Jock Peterson, I think, is a really good fit, especially with what Adam Engel's shown. I think that Adam Engel being your fourth outfielder / right field platoon guy is a great thing. Luis Robert can play every day. That's how good he is. I'm looking forward to year 2 of Luis Robert. I'm looking forward to next year of Yohan Moncada, who's fully healthy. So they have a lot of options, and the key is they do not have to trade the big pieces. They don't have to trade a Michael Kopech or Andrew Vaughn. They can go get a good pitcher who's not Blake Snell, but somebody that fits, somebody that Ethan Katz really likes. Maybe he's pointed out some guys. Maybe he's got someone that says, you know what, I think this guy could blow up, and he hasn't pitched really well, and we could get him for pretty cheap, and let's go get him. Maybe he has those guys in his mind, and I'm sure he does. So the White Sox have money to spend. They do have some openings to fill. How do they fill them? We're going to find out here over the next 2 months. And then we're going to see what spring training is like with COVID. Will we be able to get up to guaranteed rate field? I hope so, especially now that I'm back in town. I want to be able to go to White Sox games. I want to see this team in person. I know everybody does. Nobody got to see this team in person unless you're working. So let's go. Let's get this off season going. I'm really, the Major League Baseball offseason just sucks because you just sit around and wait, and then a big move happens, and then it's like, well, now non-tender days pass, so that's always a day. You could wait to see who is available there. And then you're going to just wait. Normally you're waiting for the winter meetings, but now this year they're going to be virtual, so it's going to be weird. Major League Baseball offseason just sucks. And I'm sure, deals aren't going to come together fast, in my opinion, because of COVID. Because teams are still figuring out their budgets. Teamers are still figuring out what's going to happen here. Do we think we'll have fans this year? Okay, do we want to pull back the purse strings? Now, luckily, everything we've heard coming out of Jeff Passan and Ken Rosenthal and Bob Nightingale and all these national writers is the White Sox are one of the teams willing to spend money, along with the Blue Jays, the Red Sox, and a few others. But teams like the Cubs, the Phillies, a few others, they're pulling back the purse strings. They're tightening everything up. That's why you're hearing about Chris Bryant. Maybe Chris Bryant makes sense in right field. Bring him in on a one-year deal. You know you're not giving up one of your high-end prospects for a one-year deal. Bring him in. Maybe he fits in right field or left field. And you just want to piss off the Cubs fans even more after just taking Len Kasper away? Go get Chris Bryant. Think about this. You go get Chris Bryant for right field. You sign George Springer. Now you spend over that $30 million I talked about with George Springer. You get Michael Brantley, not George Springer, for left field. You get Chris Bryant and Michael Brantley. Because to me, Michael Brantley with this team, say he signs, I'm going Anderson 1, Brantley 2. Give me the left-handed hitter right after Tim Anderson, the righty. But give me the professional guy who doesn't strike out a ton, has some pop, and knows how to work counts, and is just one of the best professional hitters in baseball. Put him number 2. Then I'm always a fan of having, in my opinion, your best hitter / a guy that can move a little bit. I would want Yoan Moncada 3, Jose Abreu 4, Eloy Jimenez 5, Yasmani Grandal 6. Think about this. You could go Chris Bryant 7, Luis Robert 8, Nick Madrigal 9. Think about that lineup. Like, that's crazy. You could go Chris Bryant 6 after Eloy, Grandal 7, Luis Robert 8, Nick Madrigal 9. I mean, that is crazy. Crazy. I mean, that's the best lineup in baseball, if everyone's healthy. But that's the key to everything. The White Sox have so many options. They still have a good farm system. Oh, and the one thing I haven't even mentioned yet is reports of, that the White Sox will probably, most likely, sign one of Yolkis or whatever his first name is. There's 2 different ones floating around. Yolkis Cespedes, Yoenis' younger half-brother, who's 22 or 23, coming out of Cuba. You see the video of this guy's jacked. He just looks exactly like his brother, hitting bombs. He's an option to come in. I don't know if he'd be quite ready right away. But then there's also Oscar Colas, another Cuban kid who's 22, 23, right in that same age range. He left Cuba, went to Japan, played in their minor leagues, and is now ready to come stateside after a year over there. He's going to be an option. So there's a lot of talk that the White Sox will sign one of these 2 guys. Everybody thought the White Sox were the favorite to sign Cespedes. But then there was talk of Oscar Colas with the White Sox. I talked to James Fox, who's the future Sox and has good insight into these guys. And, his thought process is, yes, they will sign one of them. He doesn't know. They were the favorites to sign Cespedes, but then there's been a lot of chatter about Colas. He thinks Oscar Colas is the guy that fits best because he's a right fielder with a big arm, big lefty power bat that just drops bombs. And, I don't know if I don't think they're options right away, but they could be the Andrew Vaughn they could be right there with Andrew Vaughn. And think about that. You add in another prospect of Andrew Vaughn's caliber. I mean, it's fascinating. And the White Sox, I believe James said they have about $2.3 million left in their international spending. I doubt that's enough to get both those guys, but maybe you talk to them and say, hey, what about, you in right field, you in left field, Luis Robert in the middle, the all-Cuban outfield, Eloy goes to DH, and then I don't know what happens with Andrew Vaughn. Maybe he ends up playing first base when Abreu's done, or he's traded for a pitcher, whatever it is. Again, it's just more options. Even if they just signed one guy, you're saying, okay, well, we might have our right fielder for 2022. Options, options, options. Rick Hahn continues to build this team exactly like he said he would, and he's trying things along the way, like a Nomar Mazara, who cost you Steel Walker. While, yes, everybody loves Steel Walker, they love the name, he was a solid baseball player, he didn't have a future here. They took a risk on Nomar Mazara. It didn't work out. Okay, you non-tender him, let's go. You take that $5 million, you put it in a pitcher. Or you put it in George Springer, or Jacques Peterson, or Michael Brantley, whoever. Rick Hahn continues to do things with this organization, with this roster, that are really, really good. And then on top of it, to put a little cherry on top, the White Sox go get Len Kasper for their radio booth. How do you not love it? Seriously, tell me where you look at this team and you're like, man, Rick Hahn just sucks at this. Rick Hahn just sucks at that. He told us what he was doing, 4 years ago, after they traded Sale. He told us what it looked like. Then they were able to get Eloy and Dylan Cease for Quintana. Then, they did the Sale trade for Moncada and Kopech, and then they did the Adam Eaton trade for Giolito, Lopez, and Dunning. And think about it, right there, that's 5 players. Then you go get Eloy and Cease. That's 7 players just from those 3 deals. Then you sign Luis Robert. He told us what he's going to do, and he's done it all. And they've drafted guys in Nick Madrigal, who's already up, and just a very solid baseball player. Don't look at his rookie year and be like, "Oh, this guy sucks defensively. This guy." He's going to be better. Could he be a piece that's moved? Sure, because I don't think he's a cornerstone type player, but I think he can be a great piece sitting in the 9-hole hitting 320 with an on base of 380-ish that slugs 380, 400. It's not like he's gonna come out and hit 20 home runs, but he can be a very, very good defender that's hitting in the 9-hole, that turns over the lineup and just sits in that spot for the rest of his career. I mean, how would you not like that if you're the White Sox? Andrew Vaughn they drafted. Now, yes, some haven't worked out. Carson Fulmer didn't work out. That's going to happen. Zach Collins doesn't look like, maybe he ends up being the backup catcher. I don't know. Maybe he's working his ass off defensively. I think I could see him as a piece going somewhere, but we'll find out. But overall, Rick Hahn continues to do exactly what he told us he was going to do with this team, and it's great. We all love it. We all love where this team is heading, and they still have money to spend. They have an owner who seems to be willing to spend as he's entering the final stages of his life. The Tony La Russa thing was a minor hiccup, but in the end, La Russa said all the right things at the press conference. Some guys have come out and said, yeah, we've talked to Tony, and we like the things he had to say. We like everything, that he's about. Let's remember, this dude's a Hall of Fame manager. So it's not like they just plucked an NFL head coach and said, yeah, we want you for the dugout. No, this dude's still a Hall of Fame manager. Now, do I agree with the move? No. I did the podcast where I torched it. I thought it was a bad hire. But when you sit back and you look at things, you still say, okay, Rick Hahn's still making the move because he brought in Ethan Katz, and that was discussed before Tony La Russa. There was Miguel Cairo comes in from the Yankees. He's going to be the bench coach. A lot of people really like him. A lot of people think he can be a major league manager soon. Maybe he's the heir apparent. I mean, there's different things. There's different ways to look at it. But in the end, Tony La Russa is a Hall of Fame manager. He's a manager that's won World Series. Say what you want about his drinking. It's not good. Obviously, the DUI was a terrible look. And I wish they would have hired A.J. Hinch. But in the end, the roster is still great. And that's the key. Managers don't walk out there and throw a baseball. Managers don't walk into the hitter's box. They don't do it. They don't come out of the bullpen. They make decisions that is best suited for their team. And as the White Sox enter more and more into this analytical phase and make things easier, the manager, depending on who he is somebody that maybe doesn't matter as much if he's listening to analytics. And I know the White Sox are pushing that more and more. And Tony talked about that. So it's December 4th. We're still a ways away from baseball, which really sucks. But anyways, the White Sox are set up. Rickon needs to continue moving this ship forward, continue adding pieces that can help this team win. I think he will do that. We will see new pieces on the south side, obviously. When we get our first move, there will be a podcast. There will be a podcast next week continuing to talk about this, continuing to talk White Sox. Straight to the Sox is the name of the podcast. You can find me on Twitter at Adam G. Sager, on Instagram at Adam G. Sager. You can hit up the show through email, straight to the point pod at gmail.com, and that's straight the number 2 the point pod at gmail.com. Hit me up through DMs if you want to ask any questions. I'll talk about them on the next podcast. And keep an eye out for straight to the Bulls, straight to the Bears, straight to the and then, I'll just do those: Bulls, Bears, Sox, and then, Cubs will be part of, maybe I'll do like, occasionally I'll do like a straight to the city where I just talk everything Chicago, and then we'll also have straight to the point, which is the national one, which I'm going to do every single week, at least once a week. And I'll just be trying to put out a different podcast maybe every single day that just talks about everything. And it's going to be awesome. And hopefully I will be on your airwaves somewhere, some way, sometime soon. I'll keep you guys informed. All right, we'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks.